She prayed barefoot for my success, but when I achieved it, I told everyone she never supported me. I'm writing this because I need to understand something. I need to see how a man can destroy the most beautiful thing and is with nothing but ego and lies. Maybe you'll recognize in my story. Maybe you'll stop before make the same mistakes I did. Sarah used to pray for me every morning at 5 a.m. I know because I'd wake sometimes and see her kneeling beside our bed, barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, whispering my name to whatever God she believed was listening. She'd ask for my job interviews to go well, for my business ideas to take root, for doors to open that had been slammed shut. This was back when we lived in that tiny apartment above the Chinese restaurant, when I was nobody, when my biggest accomplishment managing to pay rent 3 months in a row without borrowing money from her savings account. She never made me feel small about it though. While I was drowning in rejection letters and failed startups, she'd come home from her teaching job with groceries and this smile that made everything feel possible. She'd sit cross-legged on our secondhand couch, grading papers with red ink stains on her fingers, and ask about my day like I was running Google instead of getting turned down for entry-level marketing positions. Tell me about the meeting today. She'd say, not looking from her stack of 4th grade essays, and I'd tell her how they said I was overqualified or not quite the right fit, and she'd nod like she was taking mental notes for tomorrow morning's prayer session. The worst part, I started getting annoyed by it. Her optimism felt naive. Her faith felt childish. When she'd suggest maybe I should consider teaching too, or when she'd clip job listings from the newspaper and leave them on the kitchen counter, it felt like pity. Like she thought I couldn't handle the real world. I began staying out later. First it was networking events that never led anywhere. Then it was bars where I'd complain to strangers about how nobody understood my vision. How I was destined for something bigger than this small town with a elementary school teacher who thought success meant having enough left over for date night at Applebee's. That's when I met Jessica. She worked in corporate development at a tech startup downtown. Designer clothes, expensive car. The kind of confidence that comes from never having to choose between groceries and gas. She laughed at my jokes about being temporarily between opportunities. Like they were charming instead of pathetic. Or too ambitious for this place, she said one night, her hand touching my arm across the bar table. Need someone who gets what we're trying to build. I told it was just networking. Just business. Sarah wouldn't understand the complexities of professional relationships in the modern world. She lived in this bubble of spelling tests and parent-teacher conferences. She couldn't possibly grasp the nuances of what I was trying to accomplish. The first time I Jessica was in the parking lot after what I called a business dinner. 3 months of these dinners, 3 months of lying to Sarah about where I was spending my evenings. Jessica tasted like expensive and ambition. Everything Sarah wasn't. I drove home that night with Jessica's perfume on my shirt and found Sarah asleep on the couch, grading papers scattered across her lap. She'd waited. There was a plate of food covered with aluminum foil in the microwave and a note that said, "Proud of for networking so hard. Love." I should have woken her right then. Should have confessed everything and begged for forgiveness. Instead, I threw the note in the trash and went to bed. The business dinners became overnight conferences. The conferences became weekend retreats. Each lie came easier than the last. Sarah would ask questions, but they were gentle questions, trusting questions. The kind that assumed the best in people. How was the seminar? Did meet anyone interesting? Yeah, made some good connections. Nothing concrete yet, but know how these things work. She'd nod and make mental notes for tomorrow's prayers. Meanwhile, Jessica was introducing me to her world. Tech bros with venture capital and weekend houses in the Hamptons. People who talked about disrupting industries and scaling solutions like they were modern prophets. For the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere important. Girlfriend sounds sweet, Jessica said one afternoon as we lay in her downtown loft. But does she really understand what we're capable of? Does she push to be better? The question lodged in my brain like a splinter. Sarah pushed me to be kinder, more grateful, more present. But better, more successful, more ambitious? I started seeing Sarah differently. Her contentment with our small felt like settling. Her satisfaction with teaching felt like a lack of vision. When she'd get excited about a student finally grasping long division, or when she'd come home proud of mediating a playground conflict, it all seemed so small. That's great, honey, I'd say, but my voice carried judgment now, like I was patting a child on the head for coloring inside the lines. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Sarah had this way of reading people that came from spending her days with kids who communicated more through behavior than words. "Are okay, seem distant lately." "I'm fine, just stressed about work stuff. Anything I can help with?" "Not unless suddenly developed expertise in corporate strategy." The words came out sharper than I intended. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know we're working really hard. I just want to support however I can." That night she prayed longer than usual. I pretended to be asleep, but I could hear her whispering about giving me strength, about helping me find my path, about making our love strong enough to weather whatever storms were coming. I felt sick listening to it, not because I felt guilty, but because it felt like she was praying to the wrong God for the wrong man. 3 weeks later everything changed. A contact Jessica had introduced me to offered me a position at his consulting firm. Real money, real opportunities, real respect, the kind of job that would prove been right all along about my potential. I got the call on a Tuesday. Sarah was at school, probably explaining fractions to her 4th graders while I was finally getting the break I deserved. When she came home that evening, I was sitting at our kitchen table with a bottle of champagne I'd bought with money I didn't have. "We're celebrating," I announced. Her face lit like I just told her she'd won the lottery. She dropped her bag of papers and practically ran to me. "What happened? Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the job offer, the salary, the office downtown. I told her we could finally move out of this apartment, finally start the we'd always talked about. She cried. Actually cried with happiness. For me. For us. For answered prayers. "I knew this would happen," she said, wrapping her arms around my neck. "I knew if we just kept believing, kept working, kept supporting each other, something amazing would come through." We kept supporting each other. The words should have filled me with gratitude. Instead they filled me with resentment. She was already taking credit, already making this about when it was about me. About my networking, my persistence, my connections. About Jessica. Yeah, I said, not meeting her eyes. It's been a long road. That night, as Sarah called her parents to share the news, as she texted her sister and her best friend and probably half her coworkers, I realized something that should have terrified me but instead felt like relief. I wasn't happy sharing this moment with her. I didn't want her joy mixed with my success. This was mine, I'd earned it, and I was already planning how to earn more. Without her, the job started the following Monday. New suit, new office, new. Sarah packed my lunch the first day like it was my first day of school. She slipped a note into my briefcase that said, "So proud of. Can't wait to hear everything tonight." I the note away before I got to the elevator. By lunch I was already planning my exit strategy. Begin 6 months into my new job, I was a different person. At least that's what I told. The money was good. Better than good. For the first time in our relationship I was the one bringing home the bigger paycheck. We moved into a downtown condo with floor to ceiling windows and granite countertops. Sarah would stand at those windows in the morning, coffee mug in hand, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. "I can't believe this is our now," she'd say, like she was afraid to speak too loud and wake from a dream. I'd grunt from behind my laptop, already checking emails from colleagues who actually mattered. Already planning my day around people who spoke my language of quarterly projections in market. The first time I publicly erased her was at a company happy hour. "So how'd land this gig?" asked Marcus, one of the senior partners. Background is pretty unconventional for someone who jumped straight into our level. I should have mentioned Sarah. Should have talked about how she supported us through the lean years, how she believed in me when I didn't believe in. How her steady income and unwavering faith kept me afloat long enough to catch this break. Instead, I heard saying, "Just persistence, man. Grinding it out solo for years. Know how it is when you're hustling with no safety net." No safety net. Like Sarah's teaching salary and her parents' occasional help and her willingness to eat ramen for months so I could attend networking events never existed. Marcus nodded approvingly. Respect. Self-made is the only way that really counts. The lie felt so good in that moment. So clean. No complicated backstory about a supportive girlfriend who prayed for my success every morning. Just me, pulling by my bootstraps, earning everything through pure determination. I started telling that version more often. At client dinners I'd casually mention my struggle years, when I was figuring things out on my own. At networking events I'd talk about the sacrifices I made, the risks I took, the lonely nights grinding toward my goals. Sarah would ask about these events when I came home. "How was dinner with the Johnson account?" "Good. Talked about expanding their digital presence." "Boring stuff." "Did mention the project worked on last month." "The one we're so excited about." I'd already be walking toward our bedroom, loosening my tie. "They're not really interested in the details, Sarah. It's more about relationship building." She'd nod like that made sense, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. Like she was trying to understand a world that was becoming increasingly foreign to her. The worst part was how she kept trying to be part of it. She'd research my clients online, learn about their industries, prepare conversation starters for the rare occasions when I brought her to work events. She'd dress carefully, ask thoughtful questions, remember people's names and details from previous meetings. Sarah's the detail person in our relationship. I'd joke when she'd remember that Johnson's daughter was starting college, or that Rodriguez had mentioned his wife's art gallery. I handle the big picture stuff. People would laugh and Sarah would smile, but I could see how the comment landed. Like I just patted her on the head and relegated her to the role of supportive sidekick. The truth was she made me look good at these events. People liked her. She had this genuine warmth that made conversations flow naturally. Clients would tell me later how lucky I was, how refreshing it was to meet someone so authentic in our industry. But I started seeing her differently. Where others saw authenticity, I saw naivety. Where they saw warmth, I saw simplicity. She'd ask questions about market trends like she was genuinely curious, not like she was trying to impress anyone. It embarrassed me. "Don't have to try so hard." I told her after a particularly successful client dinner where she charmed everyone at our table. "Try so hard at what?" "To fit in. With my work people. Can just be." She looked genuinely confused. I thought I was being know what I mean. Don't need to pretend to understand business stuff. People appreciate honesty. The next work event she was quieter. More reserved. When people asked about her job she'd downplay it. "I just teach elementary school. Nothing as exciting as what all do." I should have corrected them. Should have talked about how teachers shape the future, how her work mattered just as much as ours. Instead I'd nod sympathetically, like yes it must be hard for her to be around such successful people. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jessica was escalating. She'd gotten a promotion around the same time I started my new job. We were both riding this wave of professional success, both hungry for more. When we talked it was about industry trends and growth strategies and 5-year plans. When we were together, I felt like I was with an equal. Changed, she told me one afternoon in her apartment. When I first met, had potential. Now have presence. What's the difference? Potential is what other people see in, presence is what see in. I like that. I liked thinking of as someone who developed presence. Someone who commanded respect not because of what he might become, but because of what he already was. Sarah, meanwhile, still treated me like I was the same person she'd fallen in love with in that tiny apartment above the Chinese restaurant. She'd still leave encouraging notes in my briefcase. Still ask about my dreams like they were prayer requests she was collecting for her morning conversations with God. "I've been thinking," she said one evening as we sat in our new living room with its expensive furniture and cityscape view. "Maybe we should set a wedding date. Now that things have settled down with career." Wedding date. Like I was still the same man who'd proposed to her 2 years ago when I thought teaching and loving and small dreams were enough. "Let's see how the next quarter goes," I said, not looking from my laptop. "This transition period is really critical for establishing." She nodded, but I could see the disappointment. Could see her calculating how many more quarters I'd need before I was ready to commit to the future we'd planned. The engagement ring had been modest when I bought it. Sarah's birthstone surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the light just enough to make her cry when I'd gotten down on one knee in our cramped kitchen. She'd said yes like I was offering her the world instead of budget apartments and second-hand furniture. Now I looked at that ring on her finger and felt embarrassed by its simplicity. Jessica wore jewelry that cost more than my old monthly rent. Her watch was a statement piece. Her earrings were conversation starters. Sarah's ring was a reminder of who I used to be. Someone small enough to think that love and good intentions were sufficient foundation for a marriage. The first time I explicitly lied about her was at a leadership retreat. We were supposed to share our origin stories, talk about what drove us, what shaped our work ethic. Everyone was telling these tales of overcoming adversity, of finding strength in struggle. I spent years figuring out what I was really capable of. I heard saying, living alone, grinding it out, learning to depend on completely. When don't have anyone else to rely on, discover what are actually made of. Living alone. Like Sarah hadn't been there for every rejection letter, every failed interview, every moment when I wanted to give. That kind of isolation builds character. Nodded Jennifer, another rising star in the company. My ex used to drain my energy with all his insecurities. Once I that dead weight, my career took off. Dead weight. The phrase stuck with me for weeks. I started noticing all the ways Sarah slowed me down. How she wanted to spend weekends hiking or trying new restaurants instead of networking. How she'd suggest we visit her parents or have friends over instead of attending industry events. How she'd want to talk about her students or her lesson plans, when I needed to decompress from actual important work. Or different lately. She said one night after I'd cancelled our dinner plans to attend a last-minute client event. Different how? Distant, like we're already somewhere else even when we're here. I was somewhere else. I was building something bigger than what we had, something that required more than morning prayers and encouraging notes and blind faith in a future that looked exactly like our past. I'm just focused right now. This is a crucial time for my career. I know. I want to support that. But I feel like I don't know how to support anymore. Like nothing I do is right. She was right, of course. Nothing she did fit the new I was building. Her kind of support was too small, too simple, too rooted in the person I used to be instead of the person I was becoming. Maybe we need some space, I said, just temporarily, so I can figure out this next phase without any distractions. The word hit her like a physical distraction. Like our 5-year relationship, our engagement, our shared dreams were just background noise getting in the way of my real. Is there someone else? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. I could have told the truth right then. Could have ended this cleanly before it got worse. Instead, I gave her the look that become my default response to her questions. Patient but condescending, like she was a child who wouldn't understand the complexities of adult relationships. Sarah, this isn't about someone else. This is about me needing to focus on my goals without feeling guilty about it. She nodded slowly, but I could see she didn't believe me. Could see her trying to make sense of how the man who'd promised to love her forever had started talking about her like she was an obstacle to overcome. That night, she didn't pray beside the bed. For the first time in years, she just lay there staring at the ceiling while I scrawled through work emails. I told I felt relieved. Finally some quiet, some space to think without her whispered conversations with whatever God she thought was listening. But the silence felt wrong somehow. Like I turned off music I didn't realize I'd been listening to until it stopped playing. 2 days later, I moved into Jessica's apartment. Temporarily, I told Sarah. Just until I could clear my head and figure out what I really wanted. What I really wanted, it turned out, was to pretend the last 5 years had never happened. To become someone who'd earned everything alone, who owed nothing to anyone, who'd built his success through pure individual merit. Sarah helped me pack. She folded my clothes carefully, like she was preparing them for a business trip instead of watching me leave forever. When I couldn't find my good cufflinks, she remembered they were in the bathroom drawer where she'd put them after getting them engraved for my birthday. These too? She asked, holding them. They were engraved with our initials and the date I'd gotten my first job out of college. Back when we thought we were building something together. Yeah, I said, not meeting her eyes. I'll need them for work. She wrapped them in tissue paper and placed them gently in my suitcase, right next to the shirt she'd bought me for interviews, the tie she'd helped me pick out for important meetings, the watch she'd saved for months to buy me when I'd landed this job. I was taking everything she'd given me and leaving her with nothing but the memory of loving someone who decided she'd never been enough. I'll call, I said as I wheeled my suitcase toward the door. Okay, she whispered. We both knew I wouldn't. The interview request came 6 months after I'd moved in with Jessica. Local business journal wanted to feature me in their Rising Stars section. Me, the guy who used to get turned down for entry-level positions, was now considered newsworthy. Tell us about Journey, the reporter said, her recorder sitting between us at the trendy downtown cafe I'd chosen for the interview. What drove to where we are today? This was my moment. My chance to craft the official narrative of my success story. It's been a long road. I began, settling into the version of events I'd been perfecting for months. I spent years struggling, really grinding it out on my own. No support system, no safety net. Just me and my determination to make something of pine. That must have been lonely. Lonely, yes, but necessary. I think when have people around who don't understand vision, who want to play it safe, it can hold back. I had to learn to trust completely. Were there people in who tried to discourage ambitions? I thought about Sarah, about her gentle suggestions that maybe I should consider more stable career paths. Her concerns about the risk I was taking. Her attempts to make our small feel meaningful while I chased bigger dreams. There were people who meant well. I said carefully, but they didn't have the vision for what was possible. They were content with mediocrity and I wasn't. Sometimes have to choose between being comfortable and being great. The article came out 3 weeks later. Local executive overcomes years of struggle to build thriving career. Read the headline above, a professional photo of me in my best suit. The article painted me exactly as I'd wanted, a self-made success story. Someone who'd pulled himself through pure grit and individual determination. Jessica was proud. Her friends were impressed. My colleagues saw me as someone who'd earned his place through legitimate struggle. I thought I'd finally written Sarah out of my story completely. Then my phone started buzzing. The first text was from Sarah's sister, Relly. Years of struggle with no support system. Are kidding me? Then came one from her best friender. Sarah supported for 5 years and this is how repay her. Then her mother, cannot be what kind of person become. Sarah is heartbroken, The messages kept coming. Friends we'd shared, people who'd watched Sarah believe in me when I didn't believe in, who'd seen her work extra hours to cover our expenses while I chased unpaid internships and networking opportunities. But the one that destroyed me came from Sarah herself. It was a screenshot of the article with one line of text. I prayed for this success for every morning. I thought, remember that. I stared at that message for hours. I could see her kneeling barefoot beside our bed in that tiny apartment, whispering my name to her God, asking for doors to open, for opportunities to come, for me to find my path. She'd gotten everything she'd prayed for. I'd found success beyond either of our dreams. And the first thing I'd done was pretend she'd never existed. The guilt lasted about 12 hours. Then the anger kicked in. She'd sent that screenshot to embarrass me, to make me look bad to people who mattered. This was emotional manipulation, trying to make me feel guilty for achieving something she could never understand. Need to stop, I texted back. This is over. We're both moving on. Her response was immediate. I never tried to hold back. Not once. I celebrated every opportunity, supported every dream, believed in every plan. I loved the person we're and the person we're becoming. I just never realized it'd become someone who could lie about it all. I showed the message to Jessica. She sounds unstable. Jessica said, reading over my shoulder. This is exactly what I was talking about. People from past trying to drag backward. That felt right. Sarah was trying to drag me backward, back to a version of that was smaller, more dependent, more grateful for less. But the messages didn't stop. Sarah's father, who'd helped me move furniture when we couldn't afford movers, who'd invited me to family dinners when I had nowhere else to go, were like a son to us. Sarah cried for 3 days after reading that article. How could erase her like that? My old college roommate, who'd watched our relationship from the beginning. Dude, what happened to? Sarah was the best thing in and everyone knew it. Even people I barely knew were reaching out. Sarah's coworkers, neighbors from our old apartment building. Acquaintances who remembered how she'd talk about my potential, my dreams, my inevitable success. The worst part was how proud she'd been of me. Even after I'd left, even after I'd moved in with Jessica, even after I'd stopped calling, she'd been telling people about my new job, my opportunities, my achievements. While I'd been systematically erasing her from my success story, she'd been celebrating it. Maybe she'd respond. Jessica suggested after a particularly brutal day of messages. Set the record straight, my side. What was my side exactly? That Sarah had been too small for my dreams. That her support had been insufficient for someone with my potential. That loving someone meant holding them back from their true capabilities. I tried to write a response. Started dozens of texts explaining how relationships sometimes outgrow themselves, how people want different things, how success requires difficult choices. But every explanation sounded like exactly what it was, the desperate justification of someone who'd thrown away the best thing in his and was too proud to admit it. Then the professional consequences started. Marcus, the senior partner who'd been impressed by my self-made story, pulled me aside after a client meeting. So I heard some interesting things about background, he said, his tone carefully neutral. What kind of things? My wife's friend knows ex-fiancé, says she was quite the supportive partner during transition years. Makes me wonder about the accuracy of some of the stories I've told. My stomach dropped. Personal relationships are complicated. People remember things differently. Sure, Marcus said, but his expression had changed. Just interesting how different the memories can be. That conversation happened on a Tuesday. By Friday I could feel the shift in office dynamics. People still talked to me professionally, still included me in meetings, but the easy camaraderie was gone. I'd built my reputation on being self-made, someone who'd earned everything through individual merit. Now I looked like someone who'd rewritten history to make himself look better. The final came from an unexpected source, Jessica's ex-boyfriend. I found out about him when he showed at our apartment one evening and angry. So are the rebound guy, he said, leaning against our doorframe. The one who helped her get over me. I think she'd leave, I said, but he was already talking over me. She told about our history, right? How we were together for 3 years. How she only started dating to make me jealous. I looked at Jessica, waiting for her to deny it, to tell him he was crazy. Instead she looked embarrassed. That's not exactly how it happened, really, because that's exactly how explained it to me when called last month asking if we could work things out. The room started spinning, last month. While I'd been living here, while I'd left Sarah, while I'd been rebuilding my entire around this relationship. Called him. I'd asked Jessica. It wasn't serious, I was just confused about some things. Like whether the man she'd encouraged me to leave my fiancé for was worth it. Dude, the ex-boyfriend said, and now he almost sounded sorry for me. She never got over me. We're just convenient. Someone successful enough to make her feel like she was moving, but desperate enough to leave his girlfriend for her. Desperate enough to leave his girlfriend for her. The words hit like physical blows, because that's exactly what I'd been. Desperate. So hungry for someone who made me feel important that I'd thrown away 5 years with someone who'd actually loved me. I spent that night in a hotel, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Sarah. About how she'd pack my lunch every morning like it mattered what I ate. About how she'd research my clients so she could ask intelligent questions at work events. About how she'd kneel beside our bed every morning, barefoot on cold floors, whispering my name to her God. About how I'd taken all of that love and support and belief and twisted it into something shameful. Something I needed to hide from people who mattered. About how I'd convinced that someone who'd loved me unconditionally was holding me back from becoming someone better. I called her at midnight. Sarah, it's me. Silence. Then, I know. I read what people have been saying. About the article. About what I said. Okay, I wanted to explain. Explain what? That lied about our entire relationship to make look better. That pretended I never supported. That turned 5 years of love into something embarrassing needed to hide. I had no answer for that because it was all true. I never meant for it to sound like that. How did mean for it to sound? When told that reporter had no support system, what did think that meant? Another silence. I was trying to build something. I said finally. Trying to become someone. We're already someone. We're someone I loved. Someone I believed in. Someone worth praying for every single morning. Sarah, I have to go. Wait, can we talk? Can we meet somewhere? Why would we do that? Because I made a mistake. Because I want to fix this. Fix this. publicly humiliated everything we built together, moved in with another woman, turned our love story into origin myth of overcoming obstacles. What exactly do you think can fix? I couldn't answer cause I didn't know. I just knew that everything I thought I wanted felt hollow now. The job that had seemed so important felt meaningless. The woman I'd left Sarah for had been using me. The success I'd been so proud of was built on lies. I said into the silence. Don't love anyone, Sarah replied quietly. Just love the idea of being loved. And when that stopped serving narrative erased it, the line went dead. 3 weeks later I saw the engagement announcement in the local paper. Sarah was marrying someone else. A fellow teacher she'd met at a conference. Someone who, according to the announcement, shared her values and appreciated her generous heart. Someone who wouldn't be ashamed of loving an elementary school teacher. Someone who wouldn't need to lie about her support to feel important. Someone who deserved the prayers she'd whisper every morning. I'm writing this 2 years later, from the same type of small apartment I lived in when Sarah and I first met. The job didn't last once people realized I'd built my reputation on lies. Jessica went back to her ex-boyfriend within a month of me moving out. The success I thought was so important evaporated the moment people questioned my integrity. I lost everything I thought mattered and realized it had never mattered at all. Sarah's wedding photos are still on social media. She looks radiant in a way I never saw when she was with me. Happy in a way that makes it clear she dodged a bullet when I left. Her new husband looks at her like she's the prize, not the consolation. I comment sometimes on her posts. Congratulations. Or look happy. She never responds, but she doesn't block me either. Maybe that's her final act of kindness, allowing me to witness the she built after I destroyed ours. I see her sometimes at the grocery store or coffee shops around town. She's always polite, always asks how I'm doing with genuine concern. Like she's checking on an old friend who went through hard times. She doesn't know that her kindness destroys me every time. That her ability to forgive what I can't forgive and makes me understand exactly what I owe. I don't pray, but sometimes I wonder if she still does. If she still kneels beside her bed in the morning, though now she's whispering someone else's name to her God. Someone who deserves the prayers. Someone who would never be ashamed of the woman offering them. Someone who would never trade unconditional love for conditional respect from people who didn't matter. The morning prayers were never about her faith in God. They were about her faith in me, and I repaid that faith by pretending it never existed.